Rolling.
First I'm going to show you a provisional cast on that you do with a crochet hook. And this is also a beautiful cast on for knitting. You don't need to make it provisional. But the first thing you do is you take your yarn and make one of those little slip knot loops with it. So you've got your little slip knot and you put it on your crochet hook. And I try not to crochet too tightly because gauge is not very crucial for this if it's going to be a provisional cast on. So you hold that in your right hand, then you take your knitting needle and put it in your left hand. So bring the wool up from behind the knitting needle, make a loop, and pull it down through the loop that's on the crochet hook. Wool to the back, yarn to the back, sorry, I don't mean to be a snob. And then come down through, yarn to the back, make a loop, pull it down through. Really not as hard as I'm making it look, I swear. Yarn to the back, make a loop, pull it down through, and you just keep going, one for every stitch that you're going to want to knit, all the way across. And if you do a few extras, then if you put on 210 and you only need 205, you can just ignore the last 5 when you start knitting the first row, because this is going to come out. So when you're ready, when you're done, suppose I only needed 6 or 7 stitches, then what I do is I just kind of crochet off into the sunset. And I leave that long tail, and I might pull that yarn through there. Then you turn around, slide this to the other end of your double point needle, or if you're going flat, if you're knitting flat, you can just start knitting right there. And then you knit however much you want to, and then when you're all done, and this is off the needle, so now you have to pretend that there's a big chunk of knitting here, you take this end and you go like this, and it just unzips, and you will be left with live stitches going that direction. And you can pick those up and knit the other direction, or do a bind off that matches the bind off on the other end of your project. Now I'm going to show you a provisional cast on, and I don't know its actual name. I call it the Itsy Bitsy Spider cast on, or the Twisty Wrap cast on. It's a provisional one, and it's extremely fast, the fastest cast on ever. So for swatching or something, it's really great, and it will not impede your gauge swatch. It can't be too tight or too loose. It just is what it is. So first you take the sweater wool, which is the sweater yarn, sorry, which is the dark pink. That's what I'm actually going to knit with. And the light pink is my waste yarn. You need a chunk of waste yarn. And to make things easier on myself, I'm just going to tie those two together, which I will untie later, but I want them to be secure together. Then I set up my hands so that the waste yarn, it looks like long tail to set up, and the waste yarn is over my finger, and the sweater yarn is over my thumb. And I'm just holding that knot between my 2 fingers with the needle. So what I'm going to basically do is take this yarn and go like this. Except that would be hard to knit in the first row. So I'm going to take the waste yarn and twirl it in as I go to separate the stitches so that you can knit the first row. So I'm going to make a loop with the working yarn, and I take the needle and go behind that yarn and scoop it up. Then I'm going to turn my whole hand so that the waste yarn comes to the front and scoop the wool from behind. Scoop, twist, scoop, twist, scoop, twist, scoop, twist, scoop, twist, scoop, twist, etc. Now, so as I said, all I did was really take that dark pink yarn and wrap it around the needle, except then the light pink yarn is woven in as kind of a placeholder to keep them separated. If you have to stop and count, and this is one of those things that only really nice teachers will tell you, if you have to stop and count and you're not careful, this is what happens, because all you've really done is wrap those around the needle. So the 2 things you have to do is always put the waste yarn over your finger so that when you stop, you always know it's at the back. And then if you're going to stop and count, simply take the waste yarn and make a backwards loop onto the needle. And that will hold the stitches there. And see, my little knot came out, but you can see what they're supposed to do. That will hold the stitches there while you count, and you never want the waste yarn to come over the needle, because if it twists around like this, then you know, you don't have an accurate count. But if you just make sure that the real yarn is over the needle, you count those stitches, then when you're ready to go again, you slide off that loop you put as a placeholder, and then you start your wrapping again. So always begin and end with the waste yarn at the back, so you'll always know that when you stop to count, you just put that little stopper on there, and you can do this for a very long time. And see, I've got one twisted, so I would have to work to untwist that all the way around. But it's a really great cast on. And then when you're done, when you've knitted, and suppose these are all live stitches, all you do is take the waste yarn and pull it out, and you will have live stitches going the other direction. It's just like it looks like a lifeline through there. If you know what a lifeline is, it's just in those loops that are going the other direction, there's just a string going through there. So you can still do your gauge swatch as long as that string can stretch. You can still measure your swatch and keep going.